The air in the Tribeca restaurant felt colder than usual. The air conditioner was set to the same 72 degrees it always was, but Cassandra felt a chill crawl across the bare skin of her arms. It was an icy premonition that had nothing to do with the temperature. Across the massive oak table, her husband, Julian, was paying far more attention to the glowing screen of his cell phone than to his plate of dry-aged steak. The slight smile touching the corners of his lips was definitely not meant for Cassandra. That smile was for another world, one hidden behind the glass of the device in his hands. Cassandra carefully set down her fork, trying not to make a sound that might interrupt her husband's quiet pleasure. For the past 6 months, this scene had become her daily reality. Julian would come home from his corporate law firm, drop his leather briefcase, shower, and then cling to his phone as if it were a life support system. Their conversations had become short and purely logistical, boiling down to questions about whether she had eaten or what her schedule was for the next day. "Honey, how did the merger meeting go today?" Cassandra asked. Her voice sounded a little more fragile than she would have liked. She just wanted to break through the invisible wall that had grown between them. Julian looked up, and it took a second for his eyes to focus on her. He looked like a man who had just returned from a distant journey. "It went fine. Same as always," he replied curtly. Before his thumb could resume its nimble dance across the screen, Cassandra took a deep breath. She was a woman who had built her own success from the ground up. Her fashion house, Cassandra, now had 3 boutiques across Manhattan, and her stock portfolio, which she managed meticulously herself, had grown into a source of wealth that far exceeded Julian's partner's salary. She was used to analyzing problems, finding solutions, and acting decisively. But in her own marriage, she felt utterly powerless. She knew something was wrong, but kept hoping it was just a temporary phase, a fleeting bout of boredom that would soon pass. That night, her hopes were shattered. After that silent dinner, Julian didn't go straight to his home office as usual. He followed Cassandra into the living room and sat on the sofa opposite her, placing his phone face down on the coffee table. That simple gesture felt so formal, so heavy, that Cassandra's stomach clenched. "Cassie, I need to tell you something," Julian began. His voice was level, devoid of emotion, like a doctor about to deliver a bad diagnosis. Cassandra just nodded. Her heart began to pound. She clasped her hands, which had suddenly become cold and damp. "I think our marriage is over," Julian continued. His eyes stared at the wall behind Cassandra, avoiding her gaze. "I've thought about this long and hard. Let's get a divorce." The word divorce hung in the air, sharp and lethal. Cassandra's world seemed to stop. The ticking of the grandfather clock, usually a comforting background noise, now sounded like the strikes of a giant hammer. She opened her mouth to say something, but no sound came out. A lump had formed in her throat. Julian took his wife's silence as a sign of resignation. He continued his explanation in the same cold tone. "You're not to blame for anything, Cassie. You've been a good wife, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I'm still in love with Isabella." The name, Isabella. The name of the ex-girlfriend Julian had broken up with 8 years ago, long before he met Cassandra. A name Julian would occasionally mention in nostalgic stories. A name that always made Cassandra feel like an understudy in someone else's play. "I started talking to her again these past few months," Julian confessed without a hint of guilt. "And we realized we should have never broken up. I want to start over with her." Cassandra finally found her voice, though only a hoarse whisper escaped her throat. "Start over?" "Yes," Julian nodded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "To do that, we need to resolve our affairs as quickly and fairly as possible. Let's just split the assets down the middle. That will be the fastest way. This house, the savings, the investments, it's only fair." "No." That word was a second slap, even more painful than the request for a divorce itself. "Fair?" This house was paid for entirely by the annual bonuses from her company. The vast majority of their savings and nearly all of the brokerage accounts were funded by the profits from her boutiques and her own skilled trading. Julian's salary barely covered their daily expenses and the loan payments on his BMW. But in Julian's eyes, all of it was their marital property. It was the fruit of an effort he was now ready to claim half of to start a new life with another woman. Cassandra didn't answer. She just stared at her husband, the man who had slept beside her for 7 years, the man whose career she had supported, the man she had genuinely loved. This man now seemed like a stranger negotiating a corporate merger, not ending a marriage. That night, Cassandra couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, she got out of bed. She was thirsty. She walked slowly to the kitchen for a glass of water. As she passed Julian's office, the door of which was slightly ajar, she heard her husband's voice. It was no longer flat or cold. It was full of laughter and warmth. "Just a little longer, my love. It'll all be over soon," Julian was saying to someone on the phone. "The process will be quick. I've already told her." There was a short pause. Cassandra held her breath and pressed her ear to the crack in the door. How did she take it? Shocked, of course, but she's weak. She always has been. Julian's laugh came again, light and carefree. "She won't complicate things. Cassie is too obsessed with me. She'll sign any paper I put in front of her. Don't worry, my love. All her wealth, our wealth, will be the foundation for our new palace. You'll quit your job, and we'll travel the world, just like we always dreamed. Our wealth, our new palace." The two phrases struck Cassandra like a lightning bolt. The pain searing her heart turned into an icy cold. The tears that had threatened to fall seemed to evaporate in an instant. She slowly backed away from the door, her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She returned to the bedroom, but didn't get into bed. She stood before the large, full-length mirror in the corner of the room. She looked at her reflection, a woman with puffy eyes and a pale face. A woman who had been called weak. A woman who had been taken for a fool. But what she saw in her own eyes was no longer weakness. What she saw was the flicker of a flame that was just beginning to burn, a flame that was cold, focused, and lethal. Her pain had transformed into something else. Something far more powerful: resolve. Julian was terribly mistaken. This battle would indeed be over quickly, but not at all in the way he imagined. Cassandra wouldn't complicate things in court, because there would be nothing left for them to fight over. She would reclaim every dollar, every share, every brick that she had built with her own sweat and blood. In the silence of that night, Cassandra made a vow to herself. Julian could have his past, but Cassandra would take back her entire future. The next morning, the sun rose as usual, but Cassandra's world had completely changed. When she came down for breakfast, Julian was already at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through the news on his tablet. He looked up when Cassandra entered. A flicker of surprise crossed his face at the sight of her. Cassandra did not look like a woman whose world had just collapsed. She had already showered. She wore an immaculate navy blue silk blouse, her hair tied back in an elegant chignon. There was no trace of tears on her face, only an almost unnatural calmness. "Good morning," Cassandra greeted, her voice even and quiet. She took a piece of toast and spread jam on it. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried. "Good morning," Julian replied, feeling slightly awkward. He watched her, trying to read her expression. "Are you okay?" "I'll be okay," Cassandra answered, looking Julian directly in the eye without blinking. "I thought about what you said yesterday, and you're right. There's no point in holding on to something that's broken. Let's end things peacefully." Julian looked visibly relieved. A small smile appeared on his lips. Just as he had expected, Cassandra was compliant and not about to cause a drama. "I'm glad you can be so reasonable, Cassie. You've taken a weight off my shoulders. I need some time alone today," Cassandra continued, "to calm down and gather my thoughts. I'll work from my home office. Don't worry about me." Of course. Take all the time you need," Julian said in a magnanimous tone, feeling like the wisest man in the world. He finished his coffee, picked up his briefcase, and left the house with a light step, convinced that the biggest obstacle had been removed. The moment the sound of Julian's car engine faded down the street, Cassandra's mask of calm instantly dropped. She didn't cry, but her jaw clenched, and her eyes filled with a cold determination. Instead of going to the bedroom to weep, she walked briskly to her home office. This room was her command center, the place where her business was born and had grown. Today, this room would become the headquarters for the most important operation of her life. She locked the door, something she almost never did. Then, she opened the safe hidden behind a landscape painting. Inside were not just jewelry, but also thick binders of original documents. She spread them all out on her wide desk. The deed to the house, the title to the pre-war apartment she inherited from her parents, lease agreements for her boutiques, brokerage statements, the incorporation documents for her company, Cassandra, and financial records from the last 5 years. She turned on her laptop and opened a spreadsheet. Systematically, she began to list every asset they owned. She divided it into 3 columns. Column 1, exclusively mine. This included assets she owned before the marriage, like her Upper West Side apartment and some gold bullion inherited from her grandmother. These assets were legally hers, but she knew a cunning lawyer hired by Julian might try to contest their status. Column 2. Fruits of my labor. This was the longest column. The house they lived in, with the mortgage paid off by her annual bonuses. The Hamptons Beach House, purchased under the Cassandra Company name. The 3 boutiques and all their inventory. The stock and bond portfolios, now worth tens of millions of dollars. All of it was generated from the income of her work. Column 3. Marital property. Cassandra almost laughed when she saw this column. It contained only one item. A joint bank account whose balance fluctuated with household expenses. And 2 cars. Her car, bought with cash, and Julian's car, for which he was still making loan payments. Seeing the picture laid out on the screen, her anger became even clearer. Julian's demand to split everything 50-50 was nothing short of broad daylight robbery. Cassandra's hand reached for her phone. Her fingers hesitated for a moment over the number of her company's regular lawyer. No, she couldn't use him. Julian knew him too. She needed someone new, someone unexpected, someone with a formidable reputation. She remembered a name a business associate had mentioned in passing, a lawyer known as the wolf in sheep's clothing for his lethal tactics despite his friendly appearance. She found the name in an online directory, the law firm of Wolf and Associates. Without hesitating, she dialed the number on the screen. "Good morning, Wolf and Associates," a professional female voice answered. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Marcus Wolf." "It's urgent," Cassandra said, her voice firm. After a short wait, a calm, low voice greeted her. Marcus Wolf speaking. "Hello, my name is Cassandra. I got your contact information from a colleague. I need a private consultation as soon as possible. It's regarding a divorce and asset protection." "Has a petition already been filed?" Marcus asked, getting straight to the point. "No," Cassandra answered quickly. "And I want to have everything settled before it is. I don't want to fight a war in court. I want the battle to be over before my opponent even knows it has begun." There was a short silence on the other end of the line, as if Marcus was sizing up his potential client. "I like your approach, Cassandra. Can you come to my office at noon today?" "No," Cassandra cut in. "I don't want to be seen walking into a lawyer's office. Could we meet somewhere else? Somewhere discreet?" Silence again. Then Marcus's voice returned, this time with a note of respect. "All right. There's a small coffee shop in the West Village called The Daily Grind. It's quiet there. I'll see you at noon." After hanging up, Cassandra immediately contacted the second person on her team, her financial advisor and broker, Rebecca. Rebecca was a highly pragmatic, middle-aged woman who had faithfully managed a portion of Cassandra's portfolio for years. "Rebecca, I need your help," Cassandra said without preamble. "I'm divorcing Julian." There was a pause. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Cassie. How can I help?" Rebecca replied, her tone professional but sympathetic. "I need to liquidate some stocks, as quickly as possible, but gradually, so as not to crash the price or draw attention. And I need to open a new brokerage account and a new bank account at a different institution, completely independent of my current accounts. Everything must be done in the strictest confidence." "Understood," Rebecca said. "Send me the list of securities you want to sell first. I'll prepare all the necessary paperwork for the new accounts. We can use a fully digital system so no mailers or statements are sent to your home address." "Thank you, Rebecca. I owe you one." "Don't worry about it. Just think of it as a major portfolio reallocation," Rebecca said, trying to lighten the mood. After finishing the call, Cassandra felt a little more confident. The gears were already turning. Now it was time to take the first real step. The step to begin the process of taking her life back. She opened her bank's website and logged into the joint account. The balance was around $40,000. Most of that money had been automatically deposited 3 days ago as a dividend payment from one of her stock holdings. Julian clearly didn't know or care about the source of the funds. He only knew the money was there. Cassandra opened the transfer menu and entered the account number for her company, Cassandra. In the amount field, she typed in $30,000. In the memo field, she wrote, "Payment to suppliers for fall collection fabrics." It was a perfectly logical reason that could be backed up at any moment by a pre-prepared invoice. Her finger hovered over the confirm button. Her heart was beating fast. This was the point of no return. This was the first act of actively moving assets. A slight tremor of fear ran through her, but it was followed by an even greater wave of strength. She clicked the button. Transfer successful. She closed the laptop, put all the papers back in the safe, and locked it. She walked out of the office. The same morning, calm had returned to her face. She went to the kitchen, brewed herself some chamomile tea, and sat by the window, looking out at the garden. When Julian came home that evening, he found Cassandra reading a book in the living room. "Feeling a little calmer?" he asked. "Yes," Cassandra replied softly, closing her book. "I'm ready to start the process whenever you are." Julian smiled smugly. He had no idea that the real process had already begun that very morning, and that he was most definitely not invited. Over the next few weeks, Cassandra lived a double life with the precision of a seasoned actress. On the surface, she was the wounded but resilient wife. She slouched slightly, rarely smiled, and her gaze often seemed lost in sadness. The performance was very convincing, especially to Julian, whose ego was too inflated to see beyond what he wanted to see. "So, what kind of paperwork do we usually need?" Cassandra asked one evening as they ate dinner in awkward silence, picking at her food as if she had lost her appetite. "I don't understand any of this." Julian, feeling superior and in control of the situation, explained with feigned patience. "It's not that complicated. My lawyer will prepare everything. The most important things are our IDs and the marriage certificate. Then there will be a settlement agreement. All you'll have to do is sign. The more you cooperate, the faster this will be over, and we can both start our new lives." "Start our new lives," Cassandra repeated quietly, like a painful whisper to herself. Inside, she scoffed. Of course Julian wanted to finish things quickly. The faster it was over, the less time Cassandra would have to seek legal counsel or think of ways to disrupt his plans. "I just want to end this peacefully," Cassandra added, looking at Julian with specially summoned tears in her eyes. "I don't want to fight." "Of course there will be no war," Julian patted the back of Cassandra's hand, a comforting gesture that felt deeply insulting to her. "I'll make sure everything goes smoothly." But behind this mask of submission, Cassandra was acting quietly, quickly, and in concert. The meeting with Marcus Wolfe at the Daily Grind had become her decisive turning point. Marcus, a man in his 50s with a fatherly appearance and thin-rimmed glasses, looked nothing like a wolf. He spoke softly and listened intently as Cassandra told her story without interruption. "The situation is clear, Cassandra," Marcus said after she had finished. "The key factor is time. As long as a divorce petition has not been officially filed with the court, the assets in your name legally belong to you, and you are free to dispose of them, including selling them or transferring ownership. We are not doing anything criminal," he clarified. "We are simply conducting a redistribution of your personal assets." His plan was simple but brilliant. First, they focused on the assets that were easiest to liquidate and least directly linked to Julian's name, the securities. The next day, Cassandra was driving to one of her boutiques. On speakerphone, she was talking to her advisor, Rebecca. Her voice sounded businesslike and calm, belying a heartbeat that was a little faster than usual. "Rebecca, let's start with the tech company shares." "Sell 50% of the holdings in Dynacorp," Cassandra instructed. "Yes. I'll execute the sale gradually over 3 days to get the best price. The funds will go directly to the new brokerage account, which is already set up," Rebecca reported. "Good. And what about the treasury bonds?" "That's simpler. Liquidation takes 2 to 3 business days. If you want, I can start the process today." "Start it," Cassandra said firmly. As she stopped at a red light, a police car pulled up right next to her. The officer inside glanced in her direction. Cassandra's heart skipped a beat. An inexplicable fear washed over her. She felt like a criminal, even though she was simply protecting what was hers. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. The light turned green, and she drove on slowly, leaving the patrol car behind. The moment reminded her of the risks she was taking and the importance of maintaining her composure. At home, she had to be constantly on guard. Julian, increasingly absorbed in his plans with Isabella, paid little attention to details. But there were moments that took Cassandra's breath away. One evening, Julian came home early and found a stack of mail on the console table in the entryway. He picked it up and began to sort through it. "Cassie, did the statement for your credit card come this month?" he asked distractedly while opening an envelope with his own bill. Cassandra's heart froze for a second. She had switched everything to digital statements a month ago. "Oh yes, I had all the statements switched to email. It's more convenient. And it saves paper," she replied calmly from the kitchen, bringing him a glass of water. "Ah, I see," Julian mumbled, his attention already shifting to his own mail. Another time, Julian asked, "I was looking at the joint account, and the balance is noticeably lower. What did you spend it on?" Cassandra had an answer ready. "I used it as a down payment for the Italian silk for the new collection of wedding gowns. I processed the transfer as a business expense, so it won't be included in the calculation of our marital assets. Don't worry. She showed him a fake order confirmation email she had prepared on her phone. The explanation, involving business needs, sounded very plausible. Julian, who knew nothing about the intricacies of Cassandra's business, just nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Every successful little lie, every secret transfer that went through without a hitch, boosted her confidence. She became more adept at covering her tracks. She used a secure VPN every time she accessed her secret accounts. She communicated with Marcus and Rebecca through encrypted messaging apps. She had become a ghost in her own financial system. One night, Cassandra sat in her office long after Julian had fallen asleep. On her laptop, screen was a spreadsheet titled Project Independence. It contained a list of all the assets she had secured. She had just received confirmation from Rebecca that the full amount from the sale of the shares had been successfully transferred to her new, hidden account. With cold satisfaction, she moved her cursor to the line that read, Securities Dynacorp, and typed, Completed, in the status column. She looked at the word for a moment. Every completed she typed was a step away from a painful past and a step toward a future she fully controlled. She closed the laptop. The mask felt heavy, but the weight lifted from her shoulders felt much lighter. She would continue to play the role of the submissive wife until the final curtain fell, and when that moment came, she would be ready to take a bow for her greatest solo performance. After securing the liquid assets, Cassandra knew the next task would be far more complex and dangerous. It was time to move on to the tangible wealth, to the buildings that couldn't be moved with the click of a button, the real estate. Her eyes landed on the most important target in this category, the luxurious Hamptons beach house where they often spent their weekends. The house had been purchased 3 years ago, not by an individual, but as an asset of her company, Cassandra. This fact was both a vulnerability and the key to her plan. Selling the house required the utmost care. This was no longer a quiet digital transaction. It involved notaries, official documents, and real buyers. Here, Marcus's role became crucial. This time, they met in a bustling family restaurant during lunchtime. Amidst the din of the establishment, Marcus laid out the plan in a low voice. We will conduct a legitimate sale, he explained. Cassandra will sell the house. The buyer will be a new entity we've created, Horizon Equity Group, LLC. On paper, this LLC will be wholly owned by your mother. Cassandra nodded, understanding the direction of his thoughts. So the money just moves from my company's account to an entity controlled by my mother. Exactly. Formally, the money is removed from Cassandra's assets, so it cannot be claimed as part of the company's value in a divorce settlement. But in reality, it remains under your complete control through your mother. We'll set the sale price slightly below market value to create a convincing reason for a quick transaction, Marcus detailed. The process began. Marcus quickly handled the registration of Horizon Equity Group. Meanwhile, Cassandra started preparing the sale documents on behalf of Cassandra through her trusted manager, Arthur Jensen. They needed to act fast. The longer the house was on the market, the higher the risk that news would reach Julian's ears. The moment Cassandra feared most finally arrived one weekend. Julian approached her in an unusually cheerful mood. Cassie, I have a great idea, he said, using an affectionate term he hadn't used in a long time. Let's go to the beach house next week. We'll bring Isabella along to show her everything. Let's call it a preliminary viewing before it's all officially ours. Cassandra's stomach clenched. The request was not only tactless but also highly dangerous to her plan. A direct refusal would raise suspicion. Julian, Cassandra replied, trying to sound weary. I don't want to go there right now. There are too many memories. She paused and added her pre-prepared excuse. Besides, the house is currently on the market for a long-term rental. Arthur is handling it, and he told me there are a few serious parties who are going to see it this week. It's better not to get in the way. If we can generate rental income from it, that will be good for both of us, right? The bait worked. At the prospect of easy money, Julian's eyes lit up. Oh, excellent idea. You really have a gift for making money, he praised her, oblivious to the irony in his own words. All right, leave it to Arthur. Tell him to ask for the highest possible rent. Yes. Then we'll split the profits, Cassandra replied with a faint smile. But Julian was impulsive. 3 days later, he decided to drive out to the Hamptons alone without telling Cassandra. He concocted an excuse that he wanted to check the condition of the house before it was rented out. But his true intention was to take some photos to show off to Isabella. The moment Julian's car pulled into the driveway of the estate, Cassandra's heart, miles away, felt like it stopped. She had just received a short text message from Arthur. He's here. Don't worry, situation is under control. At the beach house, Arthur Jensen, a middle-aged man whose loyalty to Cassandra was unwavering, played his part flawlessly. He was actually there with a young couple, his niece and her husband, who were pretending to be potential renters. "Good morning," Arthur greeted politely as Julian walked in. He introduced himself as the property manager, not just the manager of Cassandra. "I'm the owner of this house," Julian announced arrogantly, looking around the living room. "I understand my wife is planning to rent it out." "That's correct. I'm here with a wealthy couple from overseas who are very interested," Arthur replied smoothly, gesturing to his relatives, who nodded politely. Julian was pleased. He walked through the house, imagining himself and Isabella lounging by the pool. He even spoke to Arthur for a moment to give him instructions. "Make sure the payment is in US dollars. This is a luxury property after all. And provide me with a report as well. I need to be kept in the loop." "Of course. I will report to Cassandra, who is the CEO of the company that owns this estate, and she will pass the information on to you," Arthur replied courteously, subtly emphasizing once again who the legal owner of the property was. Julian frowned slightly upon hearing this but didn't give it much thought. After taking a few photos, he left. As soon as Julian's car was out of sight, Arthur immediately called Cassandra. "That was close, Cassandra," Arthur said, breathing a heavy sigh of relief. "Thank you, Arthur. You have no idea how much your help means to me," Cassandra replied, her hand still trembling slightly as she held the phone. This incident served as a catalyst to accelerate all their actions. 2 days later, the sales agreement between Cassandra and Horizon Equity Group was signed at Marcus's office. Tens of millions of dollars from the sale of the house were transferred that same day. The money was now safe, held in the account of a financial entity that Julian could not touch. That night, Cassandra stared blankly out her bedroom window. She had successfully defended another fortress, but the victory felt empty. She was having to dismantle the structure of her life brick by brick, just to save it from the man who was supposed to be her partner. Every step forward in her plan felt like a step back from the beautiful memories they once had. But she knew there was no turning back. She had to keep unraveling the tangle of their wealth until not a single thread was left entangled in Julian's greed. After successfully securing the house, Cassandra faced her greatest challenge, protecting the crown jewel, her company, Cassandra. This business was not just a source of income. It was the embodiment of her hard work, creativity, and years of self-sacrifice. To let Julian take half of it would be like giving up half of her identity. Selling was not an option. She could not abandon what she had built from scratch. The strategy she devised with Marcus was far more elegant and complex. They were going to restructure the company's ownership based on a legally documented promissory note. The basis for this move lay in a plausible fact. 7 years ago, when Cassandra was just opening her first boutique, she had received some initial financial help from her mother. The amount wasn't huge, but it was enough to lease the first space and purchase the initial inventory. The money had been considered a gift. There was never a repayment agreement. Now, that gift had to become a loan. Marcus meticulously drafted a backdated loan agreement. The document stated that Cassandra's mother had loaned her the initial capital, and if it was not repaid in cash within 7 years, the debt would be settled with a 75% equity stake in Cassandra. The document was crafted to look authentic. "This is an aggressive move, Cassandra," Marcus warned over an encrypted channel. "But legally, it's difficult to dispute, especially since there is proof of a long-ago bank transfer from your mother to you. We can argue it was a loan disbursement. In court, it will be your mother's word against your husband's. And in matters of family businesses, judges tend to trust written documents more." Cassandra agreed. She would rather take the risk than serve the fruits of her labor on a silver platter. The next step was to enlist the help of her most trusted associate, Arthur Jensen. One afternoon, Cassandra called Arthur into her office at the main boutique, closed the door, and poured a cup of tea for the man who had been with her since her company was just a tiny, cramped room. "Arthur," Cassandra began in a serious tone, "I am divorcing my husband." Arthur looked at her with concern but not surprise. As someone close to Cassandra, he had long sensed that all was not well in his boss's family. "That is sad news. Whatever decision you make, I will support you." "Thank you," Cassandra said sincerely. "That's why I need your help. Julian believes he is entitled to half of this company, which you and I built from the ground up. I cannot let that happen. This isn't just about me, Arthur. It's also about your future and the future of all our employees who depend on this business." Cassandra explained the essence of the ownership transfer to her mother as a way to settle a long-standing debt. She did not mention that the promissory note had just been created. She presented it as an old obligation she had to fulfill. Arthur's loyalty did not waver. Understood. What do you need me to do? I need you to prepare all the internal financial summaries, balance sheets, and profit and loss statements. Everything must reflect the existence of an unpaid debt to the original benefactor. We have to make the entire paper trail look natural and consistent, Cassandra instructed. Over the next week, Cassandra and Arthur worked overtime, reviewing old ledgers, inserting notes that confirmed the loan history, and preparing all the necessary documents for a sham general meeting of shareholders. Only Cassandra, as the majority owner, and a few trusted management-level employees who held small, incentive-based shares, would attend this meeting. They were all loyal to Cassandra and would approve anything she proposed. On the appointed day, the ownership transfer procedure was carried out at Marcus's office. Her mother, a kind-faced retiree with the same shrewd eyes as her daughter, signed the papers without asking any unnecessary questions. She only took Cassandra's hand and said, "Take back what is yours, my daughter." With the notary's seal and signature on the agreement, 75% of Cassandra's ownership officially transferred to her mother. Cassandra would continue to serve as CEO and have full control over day-to-day operations. But on paper, she was no longer the majority owner. The intrinsic value of the company was now beyond Julian's reach. That evening, after it was all done, Cassandra was alone in the closed flagship boutique. She touched the beautiful dresses on the mannequins, feeling the softness of the high-quality fabrics. She had saved her kingdom, but the feeling of victory was bittersweet. She felt like a general who had to burn her own fields to keep them from falling into enemy hands. She had protected her business by giving up the prestigious title of owner. It was a painful but necessary sacrifice. She looked at herself in the large mirror in the corner. Her face looked tired, but her eyes burned with unshakable determination. The battle was not yet over, but her main fortress now stood firm and impregnable. Over time, Julian's arrogant calm began to slowly crumble. Isabella, who had initially been waiting patiently, was becoming increasingly irritable. The picture of a luxurious life that Julian had promised seemed more and more distant, and she began to take her frustration out on him. "It's been almost 2 months. When is this going to be over?" Isabella demanded over the phone, her voice sharp. "I'm tired of waiting in this tiny apartment. I've been looking at condos in Soho, but the prices keep going up." "Be patient a little longer, darling," Julian tried to soothe her. The gears of justice turned slowly. Cassie said she's gathering all the financial records for a fair settlement. She's being cooperative. Cooperative? A caustic laugh came from the other end of the line. Is she gathering them or hiding them? You're too soft, Julian. You need to take control of the situation. Check all her accounts, her investments. She might have already moved all the money. We could end up starting from scratch with empty hands. Isabella's words stung Julian's pride. Being called soft was the ultimate insult to him. Driven by the doubts Isabella had sown, he decided to start investigating. Since he didn't want to appear flustered in front of Cassandra, he acted in secret. That evening, while Cassandra was in the shower, Julian went into her office, turned on her laptop. He guessed her login PIN, the date of their wedding, and successfully unlocked it. Then, he tried to log in to one of their joint brokerage accounts, which he hadn't checked in a long time. He entered the username and password he remembered. Error. He tried again, but to no avail. A message appeared on the screen. Incorrect username or password. He tried the forgot password option, hoping the confirmation email would be sent to his inbox. But the system informed him that the email had been sent to the primary registered address. As far as he knew, that was Cassandra's personal email. A bad feeling started to creep over him. The next day, he called the brokerage firm's customer support. After a complex identity verification process, he was finally able to speak with an agent. "I can't log into my account, the account number is," Julian complained. "Yes, one moment, let me check," the agent said. After a short pause, he spoke again. "Sir, according to our records, the password for this account was changed 2 weeks ago by the primary account holder, Cassandra." Julian's heart beat a little faster. "Changed? Why was it changed?" "We have no information about the reason, sir. As the secondary account holder, you do not have the authority to change account details or request a password reset. You will have to contact the primary account holder." Julian hung up the phone in a rage. That evening, he gathered his courage and decided to talk to Cassandra. He tried to use a relaxed tone, pretending to ask in passing. "Cassie, I was trying to log into our brokerage account the other day, but I couldn't. It seems the password has changed. Cassandra, who was reading a book on the sofa, looked up. Her expression was calm, without the slightest trace of surprise. She had been expecting this question. "Oh, that," she replied in a dry tone. "My financial advisor handled it. In preparation for the asset division, it was decided that she would temporarily have full access to ensure that neither party makes any unilateral trades before an official court decision. She told me it's standard procedure to protect the assets and ensure everything is fair and transparent." The explanation was brilliant. Cassandra used the words fair, transparent, and protect. She threw back at Julian the very words he had used to lull her into a false sense of security. The reason sounded very professional, logical, and even seemed to be in Julian's own best interest. Julian's suspicions subsided a little but did not disappear completely. "A financial advisor? Since when do you use an advisor?" "Since you asked me for a divorce," Cassandra answered curtly, her eyes returning to the book in her hands. "I don't understand divorce law or the intricacies of the stock market. I needed someone who could advise me, so I wouldn't make a wrong move that could harm either me or you." This answer silenced Julian. The idea of his weak and ignorant wife seeking expert help sounded reasonable, but the seed of doubt had been planted. He started noticing little things. Cassandra would hastily end phone calls when he entered the room. She no longer left her laptop open. She seemed to be leaving the house more often under the pretext of meeting with suppliers or checking on her boutiques. But when she returned, her face looked tired but determined. It was no longer a submissive sadness. It was focused activity. One night, Julian woke up to find Cassandra's side of the bed empty. He searched the house and found Cassandra sitting on the balcony, just staring into the night's darkness. She wasn't crying. She just sat there silently with a straight back. An aura of strange strength surrounded her, an aura that frightened Julian a little. "You're still awake?" he asked. Cassandra turned her head. Her eyes were clear in the light of the garden lamps. "I just came out for some air. I have a lot to think about." That night, Julian went back to bed alone. His anxiety only grew. Isabella's complaints kept ringing in his ears, mixing with the image of an increasingly enigmatic Cassandra. For the first time, he felt that his plan, which he thought was perfect, might have a flaw, and the name of that flaw was Cassandra. He tried to brush the feeling aside, assuring himself that everything was going according to plan. But deep down, he knew that the calm before the storm was over, and dark clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon. Time seemed to be moving faster and faster. Each moment brought Cassandra closer to the finish line she had drawn for herself. Julian was now communicating more frequently with his lawyer about preparing the final documents. Cassandra knew she had only a few days left, a week at most, before the petition was officially filed in court and all marital assets would be legally frozen. She needed to complete the final step. Her last target was the joint bank account, the family's day-to-day wallet, which until now had been a symbol of their financial union, but only on paper. Compared to the tens of millions of dollars she had secured in investments and real estate, the amount in this account was small. But for Cassandra, withdrawing these funds had a deep meaning. It was about cutting the last thread that connected her to Julian, destroying the last monetary remnant of her former life. That night, Cassandra waited until well after midnight. Julian's soft snoring from the bedroom was the signal that she could act. She slipped into her office. As she turned on the computer, a familiar tension enveloped her. This was likely the last time she would conduct such a secret operation. She opened the online banking portal and looked at the screen. The balance of the joint account was about $35,000. Most of it consisted of their salaries from the last month, plus the remainder of other miscellaneous deposits. She could have taken it all. The temptation was strong. A quiet whisper urged her to zero out the account, to inflict all the pain back on him. But Cassandra shook her head, chasing the thought away. Her goal was not blind revenge, but calculated justice. Her victory had to be clean and flawless. She opened the transaction history and carefully did the math. Julian's salary for the last month was about $30,000. The remainder of other funds that she couldn't directly claim as her own was about $5,000. Total, $35,000. She would leave his salary in the account. She would only take the part she could clearly prove came from her own hard-earned transfers and boutique profits. She had already moved the majority of her earnings from this account weeks ago. She opened the menu and transferred the remaining $5,000 to her new personal account. The transaction went through smoothly in seconds. When she was done, she looked at the remaining $30,000. That would be enough for Julian for a month or two. This was not a gesture of generosity. It was a calculated move. By leaving a specific amount, she deprived Julian of the ability to accuse her of outright theft or of leaving him destitute. It proved she was not driven by greed, but by cold calculation. She closed the computer, overwhelmed by a huge sense of relief, but also by an unexpected sadness. The door was now truly closed. No more financial ties, no more hours, only mine and his. Her quiet war was over. Now, all that was left was to declare victory. The next day, Cassandra began to prepare for the finale. She did not pack up her entire life. That would seem like a sign of desperation, and could arouse suspicion if Julian saw it. Instead, she packed one medium-sized suitcase. Inside, she placed her favorite clothes, a few valuable personal items, her laptop, and most importantly, a dark blue document folder. This folder was her arsenal. It contained statements from her new bank account showing a fabulous balance, the notarized sales agreement for the beach house, documents on the new ownership structure of Cassandra, with her mother's name as the majority owner, and a brief summary from her lawyer about the legality of all her actions. Perfectly organized. Each paper inside the folder was a bullet ready to be fired. For the next 2 days, she maintained her usual routine, but remained extremely focused. She waited. Every time Julian came home from work, her heart beat faster, wondering if this was the moment. And on Friday evening, the moment arrived. Julian came home with a lighter step than usual. A smug smile played on his lips. In his hand, he held an expensive-looking brown leather briefcase. "We're not eating at home tonight," Julian said in a deceptively cheerful tone. "I want to show you something. Let's consider it a celebration of the beginning of our new, separate lives." Cassandra looked at the briefcase in Julian's hand, then slowly nodded. "We don't need to go anywhere. Let's talk here," she replied in a calm voice that hid a storm. The dawn of the final chapter of her life with Julian was breaking. The stage was set, and Cassandra, the creator and lead actress, was ready for the finale. They sat opposite each other at the same oak dining table where the demand for a divorce was first made. But this time, the dynamic was different. Julian exuded an aura of victory, while an icy calm emanated from Cassandra. Julian placed the brown leather briefcase on the table with a theatrical gesture. "Ready, Cassie?" he began, his tone condescending, as if he were talking to a little girl. "My lawyer is very good. All the documents are perfect. The divorce agreement. The list of marital assets to be split 50-50. It's all here. We just need to sign them at the notary's tomorrow and file them with the court. Quick, clean, and no drama." He pushed the briefcase toward Cassandra. "Read it first, just to be sure. I've detailed everything. This house, the beach house, the savings, the value of your company. We're splitting everything fairly." Cassandra didn't even touch the briefcase. She left it lying between them, a monument to Julian's greed. Instead, she picked up her own blue folder, which was resting on the adjacent chair. With the same calm movements, she placed it on the table. "I also prepared some documents for you to look at," Cassandra said, her voice clear and unwavering. Julian let out a chuckle, a laugh full of contempt. "What documents? A letter from your advisor? No need, Cassie. This isn't an emotional issue. It's a purely legal matter." Cassandra ignored the mockery, opened the blue folder, and took out the first sheet. It was a printout from the online bank from that very day. "Here is our joint account," Cassandra said, sliding the paper toward Julian. "The balance is $30,000. 15,000 for you, 15 for me. Fair, isn't it?" Julian's face changed. His smile vanished. "What are you talking about? Our savings are in the millions." Cassandra took out the second sheet, a statement from her new account with a long row of zeros at the end. "These are my savings, not our savings. Money from my salary, my company bonuses, and my investment income. It's all been transferred here." Julian's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that." "No, I can," Cassandra countered, now taking out the third sheet, the sales agreement for the Hamptons beach house. "And as for the beach house, you're too late. That house wasn't a personal asset, it was a corporate asset. And as the CEO of Cassandra at the time, I decided to sell it last month to replenish the company's treasury. Here is the official sales agreement." Julian snatched the paper from her hands. He saw the name of her company, Cassandra, as the seller, and an unknown name, Horizon Equity Group, LLC, as the buyer. His hands began to tremble. This is impossible. I never gave my consent." "Your consent was not required. It was a corporate transaction," Cassandra explained with deadly patience. and the money from the sale went into the LLC's account. Money that, of course, cannot be divided as our marital property. Julian was breathing heavily. His face turned red with a mixture of anger and a slowly creeping fear. The company, at least I have a right to half of your business. We built it together, didn't we? Cassandra raised an eyebrow. She took out the final document, the deadliest one, a copy of the amended Articles of Incorporation for Cassandra. According to this notarized document, I am only a minority shareholder in my own company. 75% of the equity belongs to my mother, as repayment for the initial capital I borrowed when I was just starting out. A debt whose maturity date happened to expire just before you started talking about divorce. What a coincidence, isn't it? Julian stared at the document. His mother-in-law's name was clearly written as the primary owner. His legs felt weak. All his plans, the palace with Isabella, his luxurious future, it all crumbled before his eyes in less than 5 minutes. This is fraud, he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. This is illegal. You stole my money. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. For the first time, Cassandra smiled. Not a warm smile, but a cold one, full of triumph. She stood up from her chair. Go ahead and sue me. My lawyer would be delighted to meet you in court. But first, ask your lawyer. Ask him if it's illegal for a wife to manage assets officially registered in her name. Is it illegal to sell a company's property? Is it illegal for someone to repay their debts? Cassandra paused, letting her words sink in. You said I was weak. You were wrong. My real weakness was letting you underestimate me for so long, believing for so long that the man sleeping next to me wished me well. Now, I have taken back everything that is mine. She walked to the front door, where her suitcase was waiting. Build your new palace with Isabella, but you'll have to lay the first stone yourself. Goodbye, Julian. With that, Cassandra took the handle of her suitcase, opened the door, and walked out into the cool night without looking back. The sound of the door closing behind her was like the bang of a judge's gavel, a sound that announced the trial was over and the verdict had been rendered. Julian was left alone in the large, now empty house, surrounded by the paper scraps of his shattered plans. The silence Cassandra left behind was more deafening than his screams just moments before. For several minutes, Julian just sat there, staring at the 2 briefcases on the table, his brown leather one, now utterly useless, and Cassandra's blue folder, which had become the tombstone of his future. Reality hit him with the force of a freight train. This was not a nightmare, it was real. His first reaction was denial mixed with panic. He grabbed his phone. His hands were shaking so much he could barely dial his lawyer's number. Miller, he shouted as soon as the call connected. No time for formalities. My wife has cheated me. She moved all the money, sold the beach house, signed the company over to her mother. It's fraud. We have to sue her. We have to freeze everything. On the other end of the line came the lawyer's weary sigh. Calm down, Julian. Explain everything to me slowly. When did these transfers happen? I don't know, probably in the last few weeks. And our divorce petition. Has it been officially filed with the court clerk yet? The lawyer asked, his tone sharp. No, I was planning to take the papers in tomorrow. A long silence followed. Julian could feel a sense of ominous dread thickening in the air. Miller, are you still there? Julian, the lawyer's voice was flat and dry. I have to give you the hard truth. If all these financial transactions and sales took place before our petition was officially registered with the court, and if these assets were legally documented in your wife's name or her company's name, then what she did is, almost certainly, perfectly legal. Legal? Julian whimpered, unable to believe his ears. It's theft. It's called proactive asset management. Until there's a court order or an injunction, she's free to do whatever she wants with property that is legally titled to her. You should have filed the moment you decided on a divorce. You gave her too much time. From the letter of the law, she didn't rob you. She just outsmarted you. The phone slipped from Julian's hand and fell to the floor with a dull thud. Outsmarted, the word echoed in his head. Cassandra, whom he had considered weak, submissive, and foolish, had played him with such mastery. His next thought was of Isabella. He had to tell her. With still trembling hands, he called his love. Hey, darling. So what's the news? When are we signing the papers? Isabella's voice was cheerful and full of hope. Isabella. There's a problem, Julian whispered, his voice hoarse. The money. The house. Cassie took everything. It's all gone. Silence. not of surprise, but a cold, dead silence. "What do you mean, gone?" Isabella asked, her voice dropping several tones. "She transferred everything, sold the house. The company's in her mother's name. There's just a little bit left in the household account and this house, which still has a big mortgage," Julian explained. A sharp, contemptuous laugh erupted on the other end. "Gone? You let her take everything? Are you a fool? I threw my life away for your promises of luxury, and now you're telling me it's all gone? I didn't know she would do this. I thought she—" "You thought she was stupid. Turns out you were the fool," Isabella cut him off cruelly. "I'm not going to live in poverty. I'm not starting from scratch with a loser like you. Don't call me again." The call ended. Click. Just like that. The true love he had used as a reason to destroy his home turned out to be nothing more than love for a bank account. Now he was alone. Truly alone. Panic gave way to complete despair. He had to contact Cassandra. He had to beg. He picked up his phone again and began to fire off messages, one after another. The first message was full of anger. "Cassandra, you'll regret this. I won't let you get away with it." No response. The second message contained threats. "I'll tell everyone what a manipulative snake you are. I'll ruin your reputation and your business." Still silence. The third message began to soften, an attempt at negotiation. Okay, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's just talk about this. Don't do this. I'll give you whatever you want." Again, no reply. Finally, his mask of arrogance completely shattered, and it turned into a pathetic plea. "Cassie, please, don't leave me like this. I have nothing. I'm so sorry. Please answer me." He waited for an hour, his eyes glued to the phone screen, waiting for any sign of life. Suddenly, he tried to send another message, but something strange happened. The message wouldn't deliver. An error notification appeared. He tried to call. There was no ringing. Cassandra had blocked his number. That realization was the final blow. It wasn't screams or insults that destroyed him. It was Cassandra's complete and total silence. That silence was his sentence. He was no longer considered worthy of even a response. Julian collapsed onto the sofa in the dark living room. The grand house, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a cold tomb. He was surrounded by expensive furniture and empty memories. The debris of his greed was scattered all around him, and he was the sole inhabitant of the ruins. 1 year later, the past year, which had once stretched before her like a slow, anxiety-filled enemy, had now become a healing balm. A year was enough time to destroy one world, and just enough time to build a completely new one. In a luxurious penthouse apartment with a sweeping view of the morning lights of Manhattan, Cassandra started her day. The fresh city air that greeted her on the balcony carried the scent of urban energy and new beginnings. She no longer lived in the large house full of bitter memories. She had moved on, not just physically, but spiritually. Her appearance had changed too. She wore her hair in a shorter, modern cut that framed a face that now radiated confidence. Her wardrobe was no longer simple dresses, but sharp business suits and elegant custom-made outfits. She was no longer just the owner of a chain of Manhattan boutiques. She was a major entrepreneur whose name was beginning to resonate in the international fashion world. That morning, she had just finished a video conference with her team. Cassandra, which she had officially bought back from her mother with her own savings, was in the midst of a major expansion. They were preparing to open their first flagship store outside of New York, in Chicago. "All preparations are on schedule, Cassandra," Arthur Jensen reported, his face beaming on the screen. "The suppliers and shippers are ready, and the design team has finished the interior. We're right on track." "Excellent, Arthur," Cassandra said with a genuine smile. "Thank you for your hard work and the efforts of the whole team. I couldn't do it without you." After the call, Cassandra went to her espresso machine and brewed a strong black coffee. Sipping the hot drink, she looked out at the skyline. The divorce itself had been finalized 6 months ago. Through his desperate lawyer, Julian had tried to launch counterattacks. He accused Cassandra of fraud and embezzlement, but Marcus's legal team easily deflected every assault. It was proven that all of Cassandra's transactions were legally executed before the petition was filed and pertained to assets under her sole legal control. In the end, Julian received nothing but what Cassandra had deigned to leave him. Half of the pathetic crumbs left in the household account and the sole responsibility for the mortgage on the house he was forced to sell. Cassandra sometimes thought of him, but there was no more pain. The memories were now like watching an old play about someone else. She realized that Julian's betrayal was not a reflection of her shortcomings, but of his own fragile character. It had been a trial by fire for her spirit, forcing her to grow into the powerful woman she had never imagined she could be. She felt at peace, whole, and above all, free. On the other side of the city, in a cramped studio apartment in an old building, Julian was dragging through his new existence. He had been forced to sell the large house as he couldn't afford the mortgage payments. After paying off the bank and other debts, there was almost nothing left. He now worked at a small firm for a salary that was a fraction of his former life. That evening, he sat alone on his worn-out sofa, his room lit only by the glow of his cell phone screen. He was scrolling through social media, an old habit, the habit that had started his downfall and had now become his daily torture. His thumb stopped on a post in a prominent business journal. It was a photo from the Entrepreneur of the Year award ceremony. In the center of the stage, wearing a stunning burgundy gown and holding a crystal statuette, stood a woman with a radiant smile. That woman was Cassandra. Julian stared at the photo for a long time. The woman in the picture seemed so foreign, not because of her haircut or her dress, but because of the aura of power and happiness that radiated from her. This was the Cassandra he had never known, or rather, the Cassandra he had never wanted to see. And it was then that the most painful, final epiphany hit him. He realized that what he had thrown away was not just capital or real estate. He had lost a woman who had the mind to build a kingdom, the strength to weather storms, and the loyalty to stand by his side. All those qualities he had mistaken for weaknesses, Cassandra's patience, decency, kindness, were, in fact, the pillars of her strength. He had thrown away a diamond, blinded by the sparkle of a cheap piece of glass named Isabella. Isabella. The last time Julian had seen her was also online, posing affectionately with another, older, and obviously wealthier man. The cycle continued, and he was just another victim of his own foolishness. Remorse burned in his gut like acid. Not just regret for the lost wealth, but a deeper ache for his stupidity and arrogance as a man. He turned off his phone, and the darkness of the room seemed to swallow him whole. The only asset he had left was an eternal bitterness. Back in her luxurious apartment, Cassandra set down her coffee cup. She looked at her reflection in the large panoramic window. Behind her was the elegant decor of her spacious rooms. Before her, the sparkling cityscape stretched out, full of promise and opportunity. She no longer looked back. The past was a lesson, not a prison. With a light, confident smile, she turned away from the window, ready to meet the new day and ready to conquer a new world. The dawn had arrived, and this dawn was entirely hers.